Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep, really deep into an area that's, well, it's absolutely crucial in the energy world. We're talking about land administration.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's one of those things that often flies under the radar, but it's the foundation for everything.
Yeah.
And the materials you brought in today are really top-notch. We have some great stuff from EAG Inc. They're true experts in this space. And we also have this really thought-provoking article that dives into why more and more energy companies are choosing to outsource their lease records management.
It's a trend we can't ignore, right? And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today. We'll pull out those key insights from both these sources about what it really takes to have a really effective land administration system, especially in the energy sector. And then, the big question is outsourcing. Is outsourcing the way to go? Could it actually be this strategic advantage that really takes a huge weight off the shoulders of these energy companies? So consider this your crash course, your deep dive into this really complex world of land administration. You shared this material with us, so I'm guessing you're looking for some clarity on the major challenges, and then of course, what are the potential solutions when it comes to managing these really valuable land assets? Ready to jump in?
Absolutely. Let's dive right in.
Okay, so first things first. Let's talk about the scale of this. I mean, we know the energy industry works with, well, vast tracts of land, right? Not that automatically means we're dealing with an enormous amount of lease agreements, and we know these aren't your simple rental agreements. These are serious documents with a lot of financial weight and a ton of very specific details.
Exactly. It's not just about signing a piece of paper. These agreements can have they can run for years, decades even, and the financial implications are huge.
So when we talk about modern lease administration, what are the real core components? The must-haves. The article you shared actually does a nice job of laying this out.
Yeah, it does. And at its core, it's really about managing a ton of information, a whole lot of data, and doing it with pinpoint accuracy. First and foremost, you got to have those records, right? I mean, meticulous records of every single lease. We're talking every single term, every single condition. Nothing can slip through the cracks. And then there's the whole intricate process of tracking payments, making sure those royalty distributions are spot on, and that can involve a lot of different parties.
And I imagine that's where things can start to get really complicated.
Yeah, absolutely. And then you layer on top of that the management of division orders and the interest calculations that go with those. Basically, is figuring out who owns what slice of the production revenue. And of course, we can't forget the whole regulatory compliance piece. We're talking about rules that can change, from state to state, even county to county sometimes.
Yeah, a real patchwork of regulations to navigate.
Precisely. And something we can't overlook is those landowner relationships. They're essential stakeholders. Keeping those lines of communication open, building trust, that's key for things to run smoothly. And, we're talking about energy companies that might be managing thousands, tens of thousands of these leases. So the administrative burden, it can be, it can be pretty overwhelming.
It sounds like a massive web of details to keep track of. And that brings us to the main point that the article makes. Outsourcing lease records management to a company like EAG Services, it's not just a possibility, it's presented as this smart strategic decision. So what are those hidden costs and risks that come with trying to handle all of this internally?
The article really digs into that, and I think it makes a strong case for outsourcing. One of the biggest things they highlight is that resource drain. I mean, think about it. To manage all of this in-house, you need specialized staff, people who really understand these lease agreements inside and out. You need the sophisticated software to handle all this data, and then you've got to keep everyone up to date on those ever-changing regulations. That's a lot of overhead. It's a continuous cost that could be directed to other core activities, finding new energy sources, ramping up production, improving refining, things like that.
So it's like building this whole separate, highly specialized administrative branch within your company.
Exactly. And then you've got the compliance risks. Like we said, the regulatory landscape in the energy sector, it's a minefield, and it's constantly shifting. Miss a deadline, misunderstand a rule, send in the wrong paperwork, and boom, you're looking at big fines, lawsuits, damage to your reputation, the whole 9 yards. Staying ahead of all that takes serious expertise.
So it's not just about the cost of those employees, it's about those potential penalties if something slips through the cracks.
Yeah, exactly. And the article also points out, operational inefficiencies. If you're technical experts, you're people who are, uh, you know, the drilling specialists or the pipeline engineers, if they're spending their time bogged down in lease administration, well, they're not doing what they do best. And that can really hurt your overall efficiency and ultimately your bottom line. It's that opportunity cost, right?
Every hour spent on admin is an hour not spent on those core revenue generating activities.
Exactly. And the last big risk they highlight is the fragmentation of information. Without dedicated systems and processes in place, all that critical lease information can get scattered, across different departments, different formats, stuck in people's inboxes. And that lack of a central integrated system, it can create inconsistencies in the data, errors, and it definitely increases your potential liability. Imagine trying to answer a landowner's question or respond to a regulatory inquiry when the information you need is all over the place. It's a recipe for disaster.
Definitely sounds like it. Okay, so those are some of the potential pitfalls of handling everything in-house. Now, let's shift gears and look at how a company like EAG Services tackles this. What's their philosophy? What specific expertise do they bring to the table?
Well, EAG Services, as they state in the article and on their website, they're all about offering comprehensive outsourcing solutions for land administration. They really try to turn this often burdensome function into a strategic asset for their clients. They have a three-pronged approach, three key areas of expertise.
All right, let's break those down one by one. The first one is precision-driven lease records management. What does that actually mean in practice?
It's really the bedrock of their approach. It's about managing that entire life cycle of lease administration with a laser focus on accuracy and detail. And both the article and the EAG website, they go into several key aspects of this. They really stress the importance of comprehensive document control. So that means, taking all those paper documents, organizing them systematically, converting them into digital formats, getting rid of those information silos we were just talking about, creating searchable databases. Imagine taking those piles of paper and transforming them into this proactive, data-driven system.
So everything's digitized, easily searchable. That alone seems like a huge efficiency boost.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just storage, right? They also talk about proactively tracking obligations. So using technology to keep an eye on all those critical dates in a lease, payment deadlines, expiration dates, compliance deadlines, and setting up automatic alerts so nothing falls through the cracks. Their website specifically mentions recommendation and expiration calendars. Sounds like a really useful tool.
It does. Catching those deadlines before they become a problem, that's got to be invaluable.
Right. And then there's this emphasis on data integrity. EAG, they talk about these regular reconciliation processes to make sure everything matches up. The lease records, the financial systems, the regulatory filings. It's all about making sure the data is accurate and reliable. And then for decision-making, they offer strategic reporting, customized analytics that give you those insights into your lease portfolio. They mention things like acreage reporting, expiration reporting, lease bonus reporting. It's not just about keeping those records. It's about turning that data into something you can use to make smart decisions.
Right, it's actionable intelligence. And they also emphasize technology integration, making sure their systems work seamlessly with the client's existing software, no need for double entry, everything's consistent across platforms.
Yeah, a very thorough approach. And that's just the record-keeping part.
Yeah.
Now, their second area of expertise is division orders excellence. And for anyone who's not as familiar with division orders, maybe we should take a minute to explain why they're so crucial.
Yeah, let's do that. So division orders, they essentially lay out how that revenue generated from oil and gas production, how that gets split up between all the different parties who have a stake in it. We're talking mineral owners, royalty holders, working interest partners, everyone who's entitled to a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
And it's a really complex area.
Yeah, it can get really complicated. You're often dealing with really intricate title documents, pooling agreements, all sorts of things that, that can make your head spin if you're not careful. And EAG, they have specialists who are experts in this. They use very precise methods to calculate those ownership percentages, making sure those royalty payments are accurate. It's about making sure everyone gets paid the right amount and preventing any costly disputes down the road.
Accuracy there is critical, right? Any errors could lead to some serious headaches and strained relationships with stakeholders.
Absolutely. And EAG, they also streamline the whole division order process itself. They handle the preparation, the distribution, the management of these documents. Their website mentions managing those division order submissions, maintaining signed records, which takes a lot off the plate of the operator, And they also focus on actively managing ownership changes. Because, things change, right? Ownership interests can shift due to sales, inheritances, corporate restructuring. EAG, they make sure those records are updated in real time, so there are no disruptions in payments.
So they're constantly keeping track of those moving pieces, those changing ownership situations. That can be a real nightmare for companies if they're not staying on top of it.
It can be a real mess. And then finally, within division orders, they focus on providing audit-ready documentation. Their approach creates these comprehensive audit trails, which are essential for financial compliance, especially with regulations like SOC and SOX.
So they're not just processing paperwork; they're making sure everything's accurate, compliant, and they're taking those proactive steps to minimize any potential conflicts.
Exactly. And that brings us to their third areas of expertise, strategic owner relations management.
And this is all about, well, it's about building those strong relationships with the landowners.
It is. It's understanding that those relationships, they're not just, a side note. They're absolutely fundamental to long-term sustainable operations.
Yeah.
And EAG, they really get that. Their goal is to turn these relationships into assets, not potential sources of conflict. And they do that by having these dedicated relationship specialists. These are professionals who really understand the industry and have strong communication skills. They act as that main point of contact between the company and the landowners.
So if a landowner has a question, a concern, these are the people they reach out to.
Exactly. And EAG, they really emphasize prompt issue resolution. They have systems in place to handle those inquiries, those concerns, whether it's about billing, revenue payments, tax forms, or even those more complex things like questions about title, lease validity, specific lease terms. They want to address those issues quickly and effectively so they don't escalate into bigger problems.
It's all about clear, proactive communication to keep those relationships healthy.
It is. And EAG, they also focus on transparency, making sure everything's clear when it comes to payments, operational updates, company policies, building trust through communication. That's a big part of what they do. And finally, they keep detailed records of every interaction with the landowners. So there's a clear history, which helps with compliance and managing potential risks.
Okay, so we've talked about their expertise, but what about the results? What kind of tangible benefits do companies actually see when they outsource to EAG? The article mentions some pretty compelling outcomes.
Yeah, it does. One of the biggest benefits is that enhanced compliance assurance. Because EAG, they have these specialists who live and breathe the regulations, their clients often see a dramatic improvement in their compliance rates. The article mentions some companies achieving near-perfect scores, which obviously translates into a much lower risk of those hefty penalties.
That peace of mind alone is probably worth a lot.
Definitely. Another big impact is financial optimization. By outsourcing, companies can shift away from those fixed costs of having a full-time in-house team and move towards a more flexible expense structure. The article suggests that this often leads to cost savings of 15 to 30% compared to managing it all internally.
That's a pretty significant chunk of change that could be reinvested in other areas of the business.
It is. And then there's the benefit of being able to refocus on those core operations. By taking that lease management burden off the table, those internal technical teams can really focus on what they do best. And that can give a company a real competitive edge.
It allows those key personnel to concentrate on those activities that really drive revenue and growth.
Exactly. And the article also highlights the reduction of risk. EAG systems, their processes, they're designed to minimize those risks of missing deadlines, making payment errors, failing to comply with regulations, all those things that can have serious consequences. And finally, there's the scalability factor. As companies grow, whether it's through acquisitions or organic expansion, EAG Services can grow right along with them. No need to go through those hiring and training delays.
So it's a solution that can flex and adapt to the company's changing needs. Okay, so let's say a company is thinking about taking the plunge, making that move to outsourcing. What does that transition process actually look like?
Well, the article lays out a pretty clear process, and it seems pretty well structured. It usually starts with a comprehensive assessment. So EAG, they come in and they take a look at the client's existing lease portfolio, their systems, their processes. It's about understanding where they're at and identifying those areas for optimization.
So it's not just a cookie cutter approach. It's tailored to the client's specific situation.
Right. And then They move into strategic planning, developing a customized transition and management plan. They work with the client to set those objectives, the timelines, everything. And then it's on to the implementation phase that involves the actual transfer of those records, those responsibilities, with a lot of quality control checks along the way to make sure everything's accurate. And of course, technology integration is a big part of that, making sure the client systems and EAG systems can talk to each other. And then throughout the whole thing, there's continuous optimization. They're always looking for ways to improve those processes, to make things more efficient.
So it seems like they've really thought through that whole onboarding process, making it as smooth as possible for the client.
Yeah, it does seem that way.
Well, this has been a really fascinating deep dive into a part of the energy industry that, well, it's not always in the spotlight, but it's definitely critical. Just to recap, effective land administration, it's more than just managing those stacks of paper. It's a really complex function with big implications for a company's finances, their operations, and their compliance with regulations. And outsourcing this to the experts, to a company like EAG Inc., it seems like a really solid solution for those energy companies that are looking to streamline things, to reduce those administrative burdens, to strengthen their compliance, to improve their financial performance, and ultimately to free up those internal teams so they can focus on what really matters.
Couldn't have said it better myself. By leveraging that specialized expertise in on lease records management, division orders, and owner relations, companies can take something that might be seen as is just overhead and turn it into a real competitive advantage.
So, to wrap things up, here's a final thought for our listeners. Given all the complexities and potential pitfalls of managing those land assets in the energy sector, how could a more strategic approach to this, maybe through outsourcing, how could that contribute to better operations and a stronger competitive position in the long run? What parts of your current approach to land administration are those working well? Are there areas that could benefit from a fresh perspective? It's definitely something to think about as you navigate the ever-evolving energy landscape. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll see you next time.